Well, good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're seeing this video cast. This is a continuing discussion that we've been having, and we've just simply entitled it "Race, Culture, and the Church." Race, culture, and the church. And as one of my mentors has said, at this time of social, political, economic inflection, he said, "Well, Mark, I really believe that God is speaking to the church. The world can't hear um, God speak, but we, the church, can hear Him speak, and I believe that He's speaking to the church." So we started this video cast series. I think this is the eighth in series, and I encourage everyone that's viewing this to, if you haven't seen the other seven, do. But I am because it will give you context for who we have this morning as guests, and I am pleased. I'm genuinely pleased to have three law enforcement officers that happen to be law enforcement officers, but are unashamed followers of Jesus Christ. I have Brent. He's a retired officer, and he worships at St. John's Lutheran. I have Todd. He currently worships at Celtic Cross Presbyterian, and he's currently an officer of the law. And I have Kionna, and she is also an officer of the law. Each one, and she worships at City Church of Sacramento. Shout out to us, City Church of Sacramento. Each one is in a different field, and who they work for, not trying to be all secretive and all of that, but I'm intentionally not highlighting who they work for, because as far as I'm concerned, it's important to them and make sure the checks don't bounce. But as far as I'm concerned, it's not important who they work for, who I work for, or any of us work for. God has called us to various vocations, but He has called us, period, full stop. He has called us. Paul was a tent maker. That just happened to be his trade that he plied as he spread the gospel. He made tents. I don't think that in retrospect, if Paul were here physically, he would say, well, boy, I was a doggone good tent maker. That provided the opportunity for him to share the gospel. Now, I'll go out on the limb and say that the tent making vocations that these three wonderful people are in are the center of a lot of conversation and dealing with engagement in the interaction between those that are paid to serve and protect, and those of us, that are being protected and being served. So that's it. That's it for a tee up. I want to thank you all for sharing your time with us this morning, and it is morning when we're recording this. But in no random order. I'm just looking at my screen, so I see Todd, Brent, and Kionna. So I'm going to go in that order. Todd, just you're first out of the chute. Describe the path. Describe the path to your career, and how did you get in law enforcement? Did you, a lot of kids, I want to be a fireman. I want to be a astronaut. At 5'6", you wanted to be a law enforcement officer?
Well, started at a young age. I was about 12 years old, and I actually was kind of going down a different path, not towards law enforcement. I was a little bit of a troublemaker. And I have two older sisters. My oldest sister married a man who was a police officer, who became a police officer. And I really kind of looked up to him. But when I was about 12, I actually got caught shoplifting in San Leandro Police. Brought me home, and I still remember the officer's name, Jim Moss. He is a retired San Leandro police officer. I think he was a rookie back then. Picked me up and brought me home. He really impacted my life with that one engagement, because he drove past my house like 4 or 5 times, and I'm in the backseat of a police car. And I'm like, what is this cop doing? He's passed my house like 3-4 times, And I'm just 12 years old, right? Thinking I'm cool because, I'm 12. But he then stops in front of my house, turns around and looks at me and says, "Hey, let me ask you a question. When you see somebody sitting in the backseat of a police car, what kind of person do you think that guy is?" And I said, "Well, he's a criminal. He's a bad person." He says, "We just drove around your neighborhood for the last few minutes. What do you think all your friends and neighbors think about you right now?" And just the waterworks just really got to me. He got out of the car, went inside, talked to my parents, and let me just sit in the back seat for a few minutes while he was talking. And a couple years later, I actually wrote a letter to the chief and asked to go on a ride along. I never stole anything since then. It really affected me. But I asked to go on a ride along with him when I was about 15. And the chief approved, my parents approved, and this time I got to sit in the front seat. So that really changed me because I got to sit in the front. It was probably the slowest night in police history ever, anywhere. Nothing was happening. There was no radio traffic. There was nothing. We got some froyo that night. It was a graveyard shift. But it was really cool for me to see like the camaraderie. I later saw that when I would go on ride-alongs with my brother-in-law. And so I knew from a young age that this is something I want to do. Went to school for it. I went to school on the East Coast. Wanted to move back to California before looking at law enforcement, and that's exactly what happened. So it was a long path. I didn't become a police officer until my late 20s, so a little bit later than most. But yeah, I've known since I was a teenager, basically, that I eventually wanted to be a police officer.
I appreciate I appreciate your story, Todd. This gives me context too and for the audience. I know this lady and these gentlemen. I know them, and so I've had conversations with Todd where we've talked and he has asked for material to share with folks on his route. I don't want to get ahead of that. That might be a further question that we'll explore. But that gives me, again, when we have these conversations and we get to know one another better, then that is the tee up. That is the opportunity then to have those fuller, deeper, and more challenging conversations down the road. But if you don't know, you don't know. So I appreciate that so much, Todd. Brent, how did you get to being where you're at in law enforcement?
It was quite a long process. I too, like Todd, had and when I was in about 15 years old, had a run-in with the law, driving without a driver's license. But we'll leave that for a different story because at the time I had really no real interest. I was somewhat searching as a young man after high school as to what I wanted to do. I didn't have a clear direction, and I was thinking military. My father was trying to steer me in different directions. He eventually told me, give me 2 years of college. After those 2 years, you can go and do whatever you want. And so I started the college career. I was working full time with a lumber company, and I had an engineering degree. Working on an engineering degree, I was, pretty much starting in the direction of a construction background. While I was working with a retired officer who became friends. He had a bad experience in his career and was very negative in his stories and how he was treated. However, we became good friends, and then as well as one of my coworkers was dating a young lady whose father was also law enforcement. So the culmination of getting to know these individuals kind of steered me in a direction, and the stories that they told and the way they talked about providing service to people and what it meant to be, the standards of the career, as well as, the work that we did to help. It didn't matter, whether they were arresting people. They talked about how that was going to help that individual. Hopefully, that would help that individual by stopping whatever crime, or if they were responding to an accident, or if they were responding to an incident at a home or a fight. That they were arriving to calm and restore order, and that was a clicking in my mind. I was thinking that's pretty much my upbringing was, my father was a pastor. And so, that type of a career kind of just fell right in line with what I felt was what my calling was. And it, I once I got into the job, I immediately clicked with the philosophies of the department that I worked for, as well as the characteristics and that they look for in individuals, and going out there and representing and providing service.
Wow. I got questions already. Brent's dad was a father. You were on the path of being a civil engineer. We have much in common. Thank you so much, Kionna. How did you get to law enforcement?
So I definitely wasn't the 3-year-old kid that wanted to be in law enforcement. I wasn't wearing Halloween costumes. I thought I wanted to be an attorney. Then it was an anchor woman, and then it was a social worker. And after I graduated from college, I thought I would just get a job that paid well, and that didn't happen. I was working at Enterprise Rental Car, and they had like a management trainee program. You actually had to have a degree to work at Enterprise Rental Car, which was pretty interesting. But I ended up working there, and I started getting into nonprofit, started working in nonprofit organizations. And my husband, my boyfriend at the time, he was in law enforcement. And so when we got engaged, he's like, you should work at juvenile hall. Like, you could save money for the wedding. We could, it pays really well. You could be an on-call while you really worked at your regular job. I said, okay. So I started doing that. And then, of course, at Thanksgiving dinners, I would see uncles that were in law enforcement, and they would always encourage, like, you got to go in. You'd love it. It's great. It pays well. You're going to get good benefits. And as I started to share that story with people, they were like, that is not you, Kionna. There's no way you can do that. That is not your thing. And then it kind of made me mad. I'm like, what do you mean it's not my thing? I could do it. And so I was always, I played college basketball. I was always, fit enough. I'm like, what can I do? So anyway, I applied kind of secretly, and the process started rolling. And then I got accepted as a paid recruit, and I couldn't believe it. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is really going to happen. And so with each passing day, I kept going and going, and I graduated the academy. I'm like, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And so it really didn't settle for me until I kind of got a few years in, because I was able to really, the social work piece of me, which is, kind of I just love people and I want to help people. It really gelled well in what I'm doing now. Like, it just allowed me to be who I am and care for others and speak into others and help people. I think every cop says they want to help people. I didn't know I'd be helping people in this way. But it's been wonderful. It's just been wonderful. So here I am, almost 18 years later, and it's been good. It's been a blessing.
So 18 years, Kionna. Todd, you've been in your vocation how many years?
18 years.
18. And Brent, you were in your vocation?
I finished 30 years, yes.
30 years. Well, I'll ask anyway. Todd, you wouldn't happen to be a PK, would you?
A PK?
Preacher's kid.
No.
Oh, okay.
My father I'm a military brat.
Oh,
my dad
okay.
did 26 years in the Navy.
Okay. Well, then I won't pursue that line of questioning. That sounds so law enforcement. I just scratch that. Brent, so I'm interested, particularly you get 30 years under your belt in this vocation. How is your vocation? It's one of those things where you were you born for this? I mean, I heard your story, but in retrospect now, um, how has the vocation shaped you, or you shaped your vocation? However you want to approach that. You've had 30 years. 30 years.
Yeah, I think the vocation itself kind of turns you into somewhat of a callous individual, and you have to guard against that callousness, because day after day you're dealing with issues that a lot of us generally don't. We see it on TV, but we don't live the moment when the suffering or when the incidents happen. And after a while, when you're seeing it constantly, it's almost like a routine for you. And at least it was for me. And I had to elevate myself more, probably as a protection, to just show up and not get emotionally involved in what was going on. Handle the situation, restore order, and then it was always amazing, after incidents happen, going back, and meeting the individuals, and you start to see how that impacted their lives. And I think as law enforcement, we have to sometimes stop to understand what that impact is to people's lives, because otherwise we walk away from it and it just becomes routine for us. Mm-hmm. So that part of it, I was very naive going in as a young man. I know the first, 6 months was almost every day was almost a shock to me as to what happens. As time progressed, it changed more to a callous approach to life. I realized, at about 6 years in, that I can't continue to. It's so detrimental to who I was that I had to take a break and step away from it for a short period of time before and get a better perspective. And the department I work for was very good in allowing that to happen. As far as how, maybe I know that when the disciples, as an example, when the disciples were sent out after Jesus' death to proclaim the good news, they were told, you go into other lands and you live the laws that I wish you to live. And by that standard of life that you live, people will recognize that you are a follower of ours. And that was kind of always been my approach, is that the departments have policies and procedures that we follow, but I also have Christian values and procedures I need to follow, and I need to do the best I can to stay in line with that. And that was always my approach. And other people that I worked with would gravitate together. We had the similar work ethics and the similar what do you want to call it, characteristics in their lives, or that they lived by. And I quickly found out that they were also Christians.
When you said that 6 years, that was an inflection point for you, would you characterize yourself as a Christ follower at that point, at that 6 year mark?
I was a Christ follower. I mean, I quickly recognized, for a period of time there, we start working all these hours, we're working nights, that you draw away from those good things in your life, which was going to church and being in communion with other Christians.
Right.
And when things, I've always recognized that when you do good things in your life, when you take the time to do good things happen. And when you don't make the right decisions, you start to head down a path of bad things happening. And I've always had the ability to stop and say, hey, wait a minute, why did this happen? I made a mistake somewhere back there. I need to change that. So there was a period of time where I realized that I was getting out in the patrol car every day going, I'm not having fun. I'm trying to avoid doing what I'm supposed to be doing. It's time for me to move.
Kionna, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
That's right.
No, Kionna, as Brent is speaking, I'm hearing your voice. I've heard you speak before. The example you gave of hanging around a campfire and the smoke taking on your clothes, your skin, taking on you take on the smell of the smoke, even when you step away from the campfire. Share that, and then share also your perspective on your vocation shaping you, or you shaping your vocation.
Well, I think, so I was saved at a young age, was a believer pretty young, but I wasn't as bold. I think when I got into this profession, I felt stifled, like I had to hide my voice and hide that I'm a believer, because you can't talk about that at work. You can't talk about that at work. And so in terms of how to me, I don't know, I'll definitely agree with Brent when he talked about how it kind of makes you callous. It's something I think I still deal with today, that I'm trying to figure out how to navigate that. But in terms of my faith shaping my vocation, I always treated people kindly, treated them with respect, and it came because I think my moral compass, that's my worldview and how I treated people and just how I believe people to be. And so I was kind. And I always had little things. I'd have little, trinkets on my desk that it might've been a cross. It might've been, I would leave these little stickers on people's desks that, like Vacation Bible School, it had little verses on it, and they didn't know it was me, but it was just there. They're probably like, who is leaving this shenanigans? And so I would do little things because I felt like I had to hide. In terms of the smoke thing, I think that just being who you are, being a believer, letting your light shine, that is kind of the analogy where it's like, okay, I don't have to burn people and say, hit them with the Bible all day at work, but they're going to know that I'm a believer because I'm going to leave smoke. Wherever I'm going to be, they're going to know, like, that she's different. She's a little different. I never, people, I think you can get a little crass in this field. You can get a little vulgar. It's not been my thing. Working in the jails, you had to, people think you have to talk to certain people a certain way. This is all they understand, Kionna. You got to talk to them like this because this is the only thing they'll get. I just never believed that. And so, then taking that out into the field, I definitely feel like I had opportunities, especially the type of calls I had with working with our homeless outreach team, working with our crisis intervention team, that you're seeing people on their worst day. When I come, a homeless person in the field, dirty, I just felt like I had a little bit of time to pour into them. And I'm like, God didn't make you for this. You were made for so much more. What are you doing in this field? Why are you out here, whatever, girls on Stockton Boulevard? I would have opportunities to pour into them. So I think that where I am now, 17, 18 years later, I don't hide anything. Now it's like, you know what, bring it. It's who I am, and people just know it. So I think that I am a believer, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend who happens to be a law enforcement professional. And I think the title that I love the most is being a Christ follower. So I'm not hiding it. It is what it is. And and now it's, people want it. People want it. So it's like, they could say, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? And why are you always bringing that Jesus stuff? But people want it. So that's all I can say. I won't hide it. So
I'm just going to piggyback on what Kionna's saying.
Go ahead.
I was really identifying, we have about the same amount of time in law enforcement. We're both 18-year veterans. And I have a lot of those same experiences. Like throughout my career, I can see phases that the type of officer that I was in my career. As a rookie, I'm just like invincible. Nothing can stop me. I'm energetic. I just want to go out and have fun and do the job and be with my coworkers and work as a team and help people. And as you kind of mature, as Brent was saying, I call it jaded. He called it callous. different terminology, but you're exposed to trauma. And, it's the worst days of people's lives. People don't dial 911 when they're having a good day.
Okay.
They dial 911 on possibly the worst days of their lives. And it's our job to come and respond and try to calm things down, bring the peace back to their lives. But we're also exposed to that trauma. We have to grow that thick skin. We have to have that professionalism, but it does affect us because we're firsthand witnesses to trauma. And I label it as trauma because I just kind of recognized that's what it is a few years ago. So I can relate a lot with both what Brent and Kionna have said. And in the beginning of my career, my faith wasn't a big part of my job. It was almost, like I have that home life, I have a faith life, and then I have the career. And through my experiences, I don't know how anybody can be a police officer without being a Christian follower of Christ. I put a lot onto his shoulders, and he takes care of me, and it's glorious. And I don't know how anybody can do it without him. So now, I bring God to people out in the street. I don't hide it anymore. Much like Kionna, it's who I am. I embrace it, but it took me years. I remember going to a men's retreat and just praying, how can I bring my faith to my coworkers and the people that I interact with, right? And that was, 2016, I want to say. And it was just, so I made that conscious effort to start offering prayer to people. I prayed with groups of people out in the middle of bad neighborhoods, out on sidewalks, in the middle of major intersections, victims, suspects. I offer a lot of suspects prayer as we're walking into jail or right before we go in, or, I put people in the backseat of my car with handcuffs and would offer them prayer then. And I've only been denied, like, no thanks, I don't believe in that, maybe twice. So people do want it. And it's a powerful thing. So
what an incredible,
been a progression, and you can see it's emotional about it as well. But
it's an incredible,
it's awesome.
An incredible testimony that you just shared. I'm going to ask you now, Todd. You give me a lot to follow up on. By any definition, what you just described vocationally is you're a pastor.
Yeah,
you are a pastor. I'm glad you agree. You agree. So go ahead. You were going to say something.
No, it's I've shared my morning devotionals with people because, you do a morning devotional and you're like, oh, okay, that's cool. And then later on in the day, you're like, oh my gosh, this applies. And you just share that, and it brings peace to people. It really does. It's amazing to see that. For example, just a couple of weeks ago, I was doing a security on a homicide shooting, and it happened overnight. I worked day shift, came out there to relieve the night officers so they can go home, and I'm just working security, and the detectives were just wrapping up the scene, and a group of young women came up to the scene, and they were relatives of the victim, and they just said a quick prayer, and you could see they were very emotional. There were a lot of tears, there's a lot of crying, a lot of hugging, and then they finished off with a prayer and started walking away, and I just shared my morning devotional with them, and it changed the whole. When I first approached them, they were like, I was a police officer approaching them and saying, excuse me, can you hold on a second? And all of a sudden you could see their defenses go up. Like, what does this cop want? Right? He's going to harass us or something. And then I just told him, hey, I just wanted to share my morning devotion with you guys. And instantly, different mood, right? And we ended up saying a quick prayer together, and they thanked me and went on their way. And it was just that small little, I mean, it wasn't probably small, it was probably quite significant for them and for me, right? But it was just that, just making that small little effort to interact in a positive way with somebody is just, and I love it. I'm addicted to that. So that's like my drive right now.
Yeah.
Go
ahead. No, go ahead, Kionna.
I think, and Todd, it's ministry. This is ministry, and you think it's like, oh, it's vocation, we get paid for it. But I really feel the same thing you feel. It's like, oh, you're able to make these deposits and really police in a less traditional way. Like you're able, to me, it's what policing should be. I just think it's beautiful. I mean, it's ministry. That's how I feel. It's like, gosh, you've allowed me to be in a place where I can still speak life into others.
Right.
And like you're saying, they want it. Like taking off the, the suspect, the criminal, the whatever. These are lost souls that need, to be saved. And so that's what we get, a whole bunch of them to be able to speak into. And I think it's pretty cool. So,
and I think also I've put in for detectives 3 times. And the first time I was pretty young in my career and I was just doing it for the experience. But the second time I was pretty angry that I didn't get the spot, because I was like, oh man, I've done all this stuff. I've done crime scene investigations. I've been to all of these detective classes. I'm certified, and I can't believe I didn't get it. So I was a little angry. And then the third time, I just prayed a lot and I said, God, if this is where you want me, I'll get the spot. If not, no big deal. And so I really walked in there with no stress whatsoever. And so then I didn't get the spot, obviously. I'm still out on the street. So I'm like, okay, God, this is where you want me. So he's not ready for me to be off the streets just yet.
Yeah.
I applied 3 times, didn't get it. So
yeah. And people keep asking me, everybody's been asking me for the last 3 years, you going to apply? You going to apply? You going to apply? You going to put in? I was like, no, I don't think this is where God wants me.
I know, right?
I can look back at my entire career and say, you know what, he has been with me every step of the way. And I also there's many opportunities out there where I have been ministered to by the individuals that I've come in contact with, which really surprises me. The first couple of times it really surprised me where I am doing my job and the individual that I have arrested is the one that's ministering to me and recognizing that maybe I'm in a bad spot now. So it's a two-way street out there, and it really is amazing. I think that as time has progressed, you start to realize that there's really, really bad people and the devil's at work out there.
Absolutely.
And it's very ugly. But there's also God is working out there, and I can see Jesus in a major instances where, there's one instance where I should have been dead, and I know exactly what happened. Jesus walked in and protected me in that situation. So it's a very rewarding career. It can be very taxing on an individual. But like each one of my co-parts here, God is walking with us. So
absolutely.
When we look at our walks, I like how you characterized it, Todd. How we tend to bifurcate, or however we segregate our, I'll give God this. He gets Sunday morning, got exclusive rights for Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. Saturdays, it's my fam. Monday through Friday, whoever cuts the checks or writes the checks, I give my devotion to them. Again, as I shared earlier, Paul made tents. Other than just that reference and how he got to know Priscilla and Aquila through that vocation, there was no focus on his tent making. It was his life and how he interacted with others, how he continued to share the gospel. If we fully recognize that we are ministers of the gospel of Jesus Christ, let's recognize that. And then he loves the Jeffrey Dahmers of the world just as much, not any less than he loves me. Then that, if we understand and embrace that, then we understand the depth of not only the love of Christ, but what we are called to be in terms of our interaction. I am so made better just in our conversations. I'm coming up on, it's kind of like 15-minute warning here. So you guys have given me so much in terms of side questions that I'd like to go down, but I want to kind of stick with the theme that I had laid out before me. Maybe you have to replay the tape again because you've shared those incidents. Maybe you can recall an incident that was particularly that really grasped your spiritual attention in such a way that okay, I'll put it in this term. One of our grandchildren was rising up against my wife or their grandmother, and my wife pulled out a little wooden spoon. Pulled out a little wooden spoon and said, "Listen, little girl, you don't know who you're messing with." And in her naivete, she says, she just kind of repeated the question back. It's like, "I don't know who I'm messing with," and my wife had to like laugh at that, but the seriousness of the situation. She was like, "You don't even understand what I'm saying," and I'm getting angry and getting ready to discipline you, and you don't understand who you're messing with. I think that's a good example, for me at least, that we don't understand who we are engaging with in terms of God that speaks things into existence. He just speaks and things happen, and things are from nothing are. I'm not sure what we think of in terms of, the whole, how the human can conceive of God, and who he is and how he exists, and no beginning, no end, all of that. But when we dial it down to understand that, yeah, he saved, as you said, Brent, I know what happened. He saved my life. Yeah, I know he's busy with wars in the Middle East and all that good stuff, but no, he saved my life. When we start to see those points, then it's like, oh, I mean, I can go on and on. I won't. This is about you, not me. But there were times in my life where it's like, oh, I know. I don't have to argue with anyone who says, well, I'm not sure God is real. Well, that's your problem. That really is your problem. I know he's real. And if you want to hear those stories, I can share those with you, but today's not the day. So Todd, any particular example that you can point back to? You're the man, you're the guy that texts me and said, Pastor Mark, I'd like some Bibles. You got some swag that I can give to my folks that I encounter down the road. It's like, you're the one and only officer of the law that has ever done that.
Really?
Yep.
Well, I needed a Bible and for a guy, and your name was the first name that popped into my head. So I appreciate you. And it was what I like to call a divine appointment, because that text wasn't just for a Bible. That was for us to reconnect. Absolutely. It had been a while.
Absolutely.
And it kind of rekindled our friendship and discussions and stuff. So that was just God saying, hey, you two need to get back into each other's lives. So very cool. But the one instance really that kind of stuck out with me, now it wasn't my whole career. Like I mentioned, it was 2016 that I was at a men's retreat, and I really felt a calling. It was really nice. It was 3 days with 300 guys up in the woods, no cell signal. We're all praising God, and it's just men supporting men. And I love doing those kinds of retreats. It grounds me. It just so happened it was 3 days. It was all God's plan. Weird, right? It was 3 days after I was involved in a shooting. And so it was like perfect timing. I got to get away. I didn't catch a lot of the media flack. So I had no cell signal. So it was a lot of quiet time and just lifting it up to God. And it was at that point where I really felt driven to bring God to my career first. And so I had to make conscientious efforts. I started wearing my cross out where people could see it. I started praying at the beginning of shift. So before I walk into the station, that's when I do my little devotional right there in the car. I drive, listening. I either listen to my Bible online or K-Love, because music really moves me too. So if I start out my day focused on God, it'll affect everyone I come in contact with throughout my day. So days that I miss it, you can tell.
Interesting. Kionna?
And that happened about 2016.
Well, that's the smoke. I love it. That's
Right.
like when you're on fire, everybody's going to smell like smoke. And so it's like you're going to touch everybody. It's so it's true. I pray over my team. I'm constantly just praying. I pray when we have missing persons. I had one the other night, and my team was they did not want to continue to search for him. They're like, it's not an at risk. And I'm like, my heart was like, if this was my 55-year-old uncle, I'd want to keep looking. And they were kind of bothered by it. And I made them. And so I got in the car like, Lord, please let us find him. Please, I don't want to make it. And I'm not joking. Within 20 minutes, we found him. And I'm like, yeah, I was so excited, but I had to keep my calm when I went up to when we found him. But I'm constantly praying. I'm praying for covering over my team, safe choices, praying for the leader in our department, just praying. And it matters, it really matters. And so I think when I think about that question of just how I think the vocation definitely has shaped me. It's made me a little more callous. I think I've had some issues in my marriage because of it, because I'm a little bit more and kind of stoic, at times I could be. And my kids, I run a little army over here. So it's like, I'm not as connected sometimes because I feel like, listen, I got to work in graveyards and I just don't have time to be present sometimes. And so it's affected me. I think in my latter years, just like you were saying, Todd, that I think that my faith has definitely shaped my vocation more. And actually, when I look back, I think it's always been, I just haven't been as comfortable. It's always been who I am. I just haven't been as comfortable to be so bold. And now it's just a great feeling. And it's just who you are. So you really it can't be bifurcated now. It's just who you are. You are a believer who happens to be in law enforcement, and that's your first calling. So it's pretty easy to it just comes. So anyway.
What do you say, Brent?
Well, it's very fun to hear both Todd and Kionna talk about it, because as an officer, I wasn't necessarily so, as we go through stages in our career and in our lives, not just our career, but I know as I became a supervisor, I would do the exact same things. When I got in the car to leave the house, that was the commute time was the time to right myself before I started my day. I always would pray, hey, I know that you're leading us. I know that you're leading me, and, allow me to be the supervisor that I need to be, as well as even as the manager. I would say this, same thing, and be with the people that not only that I work with, but that we come in contact today, and help us to get through this. It's probably the most, going back and looking at, probably the most pivotal moment probably was one morning I had the job to go over to my parents' house and pick them up and take them to the airport. So I get up early and get my breakfast, and I drive over to their house. Their front stoop has a window there. It's open. And as I arrive, they're having breakfast as well as their devotion at the table. And I was going to interrupt them. Doors locked. And I stopped and I just watched. And they always told me that they prayed for me. And they're having devotion and they're praying for my safety. And they're praying for my brothers and sisters' safety. You know, it's their daily thing. And it just was one of those moments in my life where I thought, you know what? This is the leadership in my family. 2 days later, the incident where I stopped to help somebody on a freeway. They're broken down. It's at night. And I explained to them that they have a tow truck coming. I explained to them, you know, sit in your car. We're kind of in a bad place. Put your seatbelt on. As I'm walking back to the car to get into my patrol car, there's a car sliding, probably close to 90 miles an hour, is sliding directly at us. And in my mind, I said, oh God. And I jumped in my car thinking, okay, that's the only place I can be right now. And that car slid right past us. I don't know how, I don't know what happened, but for all intents and purposes, when I'm looking at a vehicle that's, I mean, literally, all I can think of is I can jump in the car and that thing goes right past us. And I just sat there for a minute. I said, you know, my parents were praying for me. God is here. Jesus is here with us in this moment. Yeah. And the poor lady in the car ahead of us she got out of the car and just broke down because she saw it all in her mirrors. She heard it, she saw it, and she was the same thing. She's, what happened? How did that not hit us? Right. So.
Right. It's interesting. I've shared the story often about my father. Again, I'm a PK, Todd. I'm a preacher's kid, and my father, who was a electrical contractor by vocation, church planter by choice, by calling, I'd say. But the memory I have of him most is his consistent, ongoing prayer. Early in the morning, late at night, over breakfast. I joke, but I don't joke. Food would get cold. He's praying over the food. It's like, my God, it's like, can we eat? You know, he prayed for, gosh, I need to stop because I get too emotional, but to your point, and, you know, my kids, my grandkids, they're the first thing I think about every morning and the last thing I think about every night, every day, 365 days of the year. And it's funny, we've had this almost an hour's worth of conversation. We haven't said anything about the killing of George Floyd. I'd like to save that, a robust discussion of that for our next gathering, whenever that's going to be. But I wanted to just throw this out. I wrote this down, and I don't know, you guys are officers, you know what's going on, you know what affinity groups you have or don't have. But what I wrote down is a law enforcement officers retreat, is that there needs to be an opportunity for law enforcement officers to come together that are believers and worship and be made whole. Yours is a very, if let me go out on a limb, if law enforcement was filled with women and men like yourselves, you're far from perfect. I'm not going out on a limb on that. It's like you're human, so you're not perfect. But if law enforcement was filled with women and men like yourselves, dare I say, we would have nothing in terms of the issues of life, the societal issues that we have right now that we're facing. Because essentially what you have are broken people trying to maintain order over broken people. And that's a non sequitur that will fail every time. I don't care how much training, how much funds, it doesn't matter. Broken people can't begin to help restore broken people. And how you all approach the examples you gave about how you minister to those that you engage speaks volumes. And that is what's needed. So I'll throw that out there with hopes that you all will pray about that, think about that. I don't even know how that would happen. I don't know when it would happen, but I think that as I don't know if it was you, Todd, or Kionna, that said people want it. Both those that you serve, but I would submit your peers. They may not know they want it, and it may not be, it may not be the thing to embrace. It might, dare I say, folks may see that as a sign of weakness. But as Clint Eastwood said, and I'm no fan of Clint Eastwood, person's got to know his limitations. And you got to know that, you know what, I can't get through this on my own. I'll run out of gas. I'll run out of, whatever. Yeah, let me leave it at that, because if I ask you another question, it's going to go at least 5 minutes. So I'm going to give you all each the opportunity for last words, and that will close us out for this session. And then for those that are viewing this, there will be another session on this, and we do want to speak to the societal issues that have been exposed. They were already there, but have been laid bare with the killing of George Floyd. Last words, Todd, last words.
Thank you. I would say, to wrap up, I would say, Mark, what you just said really kind of spoke to me, but I would say you will be surprised, and as I am surprised, at how many people in law enforcement are like me. Like I said, I listen to K-Love, and when my shift is ending, I pass on my car to another person, and the next day, I leave the radio station on K-Love, right? Christian music. And the next day, I see them again and say, "Hi, I didn't know you listened to K-Love," right? Or somebody would get in my car to move it because I'm blocking road and my car needs to be moved and my radio's on K-Love. And they get in, and I've had the comment of, "Oh, I love your music choice," right? And it's like, "Oh, I had no idea you were a follower," right? And so we would connect that way. And so on a regular basis, my peers would strike up conversations saying, "Hey, I know you're a Christian. I'm struggling with this. Hey, I know you're a Christian. What do you think about that?" And we get into these conversations of people that, they're my friends, they're my coworkers. I would take a bullet for these people, but I don't know that they're a follower of Christ. And so It's that, and so it constantly surprises me. And so it's out there. And the way we make that change is one person at a time. I think I'm a field training officer, and I don't hide it with my trainees. If they're not Christian, they don't listen to K-Love, they get 1 month of listening to K-Love. 40 hours a week. Sorry, but not sorry. Right? And it opens up, it just opens it up to, I was taking a new trainee for another field training officer, and he gets in my car. He's only going to ride with me for 1, maybe 2 days. And right off the bat, he turned on K-Love because he gets the car ready for us, and I get in, he's already got K-Love playing. And so it opens up that opportunity for conversation about our faith. And he's a devout follower. So it was really neat to see. And so there's more officers than you can probably imagine, than I even know, that and I still get surprised by the opportunities of opening up the conversation based on our faith. And so that's why I don't hide it anymore.
Wow.
And so it's glorious. And then the last thing was my devotion today was, I got to pull it up. It's from Philippians. And it was, I was reading this and doing this right before we started this conversation. And it was Philippians 4:9. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice, and the God of peace will be with you.
Amen. Amen.
That's all I got.
Brent, give us some last words.
I will fully agree with Todd. There are a large amount of Christians in the law enforcement community. They're all at different levels in their faith, as Kionna said earlier. Is that some are hiding, some and just need to be pushed a little bit. Some are full out there in full view, and others are in between. So be very confident in the fact that Jesus is present in the law enforcement community.
Amen. Amen. Kionna, give us last words. Last words of the last words.
I too want to piggyback on what Todd and Brent said, because I think, and we'll get into question number 5 when we talk about George Floyd, but I think there's a sentiment that there's not a lot of believers. And I think that at the very core, most law enforcement personnel got into it. And if you ask anybody, they're going to say, it's because I want to help people. I want to help people. Never to hurt or harm, but to help and to help people. And so I think as I hope that ripple and current and that particular voice is heard, because I do too believe that there are more. Obviously, we can talk about the bad apple. We're going to probably go down that road. I don't want to start that, but I'm encouraged just to know. I mean, you have a department of much smaller than my department, Todd, and I know Brent, yours is probably much larger than ours, but just imagine that there's so many of us that are believers that want to do the right thing. And I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged. One thing that you said that was really powerful to me, Brent, was you were able to see your parents pray for you. When I thought about that, it's like, okay, there was a movie I watched where somebody like faked their death. I know this is kind of weird. Faked their death, but they were able to see people talking at their funeral. You know, I'm not saying that they were your parents, but you hear people praying for you, I'm praying for you, but to actually see that and you were able to look in the window and maybe, I don't even know, I envisioned the window open and you can hear your dad crying out your name and asking for covering over his son. I just think that was just really powerful. I know the community prays for us as law enforcement personnel. I know my bonus dad is praying for us, but I'm just encouraged because I think that there's so much good in law enforcement and in the community, you know, and obviously we can talk about the media and go there, but I'm just encouraged because like you, Todd, I'm an AM 710. I don't know if you listen to 710 AM girl talk show. So that's always in my car. And I kind of get my own car. No one really gets it, but it's all, you know, I get the car washers that wash it and it's always still on the station. But when I worked at Enterprise, every time I go clean out a car, I change the station to AM 710. And I'm like, and that's what I learned about 710. And I love, I love 710. So anyway, but I just want to say, I'm excited about this. I like these conversations. I like what you said about having a retreat. I think it's something that would be amazing. I think it would link more of us together. And I think it will embolden the profession, especially our local personnel, to see who our other allies are, you know, and to be able to call on each other, lean on each other, and to be able to continue to spread the gospel. And this is ministry. Again, we can't, how dare us not say anything. So we have to, that's the charge. So I'm excited to have met you guys, and I'm excited to continue these conversations because they're really, really rich, really, really rich.
I was first year college, and I was first time I'd ever been away from home for any length of time. I was doing surveys for Caltrans, my engineering vocation, and I was up in the Sierras, up in South Lake Tahoe, doing surveys, and I was saving money for a truck, and so I was literally. This is back in the day when you work for the state, you get per diem, you'd get money, and now it's like you get reimbursed for what you spend. Back then you got an allowance, and what you didn't spend, you got to pocket. So I was saving money for a truck. I wanted a truck. So I wasn't eating, and I wasn't eating for a long time. I'll never forget this, and I'm sure I'll get emotional, but it was like 4 or 5 in the morning. No, it's 5 in the morning. And I was literally, my body was going into withdrawals. I was starved. I was literally, I'd starved myself. I was like drinking soda and eating potato chips to save money. It's just, don't hate me. It's just horrible. And I'm in the bathroom, just doubled over, and I was like, God, help me, God, help me. And I got through the day. The survey crew allowed me to sleep in the truck, and that was on a Friday. And so Friday night I get home. My father met me at the house, and he said, son, what was going on at 5 o'clock this morning? He called the time, he called the day, he called the situation. It's like, what was going on at 5 o'clock this morning? He said, God said that there's something going on. And I explained to him, and he was like, you idiot, what's the matter with you? But I say all that to say, God is real. Prayer is this awesome vehicle that he uses for communication that I can't begin to understand, but I know it works. And I pray for you guys. I pray for you guys. I pray for my kids, but I pray for law enforcement. That God give you wisdom and give you protection. In that order. Give you wisdom, give you protection.
Thank you.
Thank you all. As I said, this conversation will continue. And again, I encourage everyone that is watching this podcast, this video cast right now, to look at the prior 7 that will give you context for this one. There will be a follow-up, at least one follow-up, hopefully more, with this awesome crew. And the charge for you 3 officers is to really pray and think about how we can, it doesn't have to be anything fancy, let it be organic, and let's just see. It starts with picking a date, a time, and getting the word out to see who would be interested. And if it's 6 people, 3 of you plus 1 friend, or if it's 60 people, or if it's 600 people, it doesn't matter. We can do with social distancing, we can do a Zoom something, or we can do a socially distanced physical something. But let's be earnest. Let's be sincere about trying to gather a group. I'm always into it, being the engineer I am. I want tangible takeaways. It's one thing to talk about a subject, but even in light of the killing of George Floyd, what I am sensing is a waning of energy and desire. And before you know it, the whole issue will have been supplanted by, if not the election or the next issue of or the next episode of the Kardashians or whatever. It's always something where we've got a very short attention span. But if we want different, we have to be and do different. That's it. Thank you all. I appreciate you, and look forward to our next gathering.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Care.
Thank you.